Дело семи было выделено в отдельное производство из общего уголовного дела по факту массовых беспорядков в Ереване 1 марта 2008 года, когда оппозиция протестовала против итогов президентских выборов, победу на которых, по данным Центра избиркома, одержал действующий президент Серж Саргсян. Несогласная с результатами президентских выборов оппозиция с 20 февраля проводила в стране массовые акции протеста, которые 1 марта переросли в столкновения с правоохранительными органами. В общей сложности в результате событий 1-2 марта погибли 10 человек, а 265 получили ранения различной степени тяжести.
So now they're doing it by changing the law, the criminal code, so not the criminal code, the court procedure code, so that they can, say, okay, because the guys didn't respect the judge, they can, now they want to have the trial without them present at all.
So those called provocators, do you think, how many of them, like a dozen of them are sitting inside?
There were like 20, I think. They were the guys who came out first. We already recognize them. You can sort of tell who they are by the way they look.
Do you think this is a police which just in the civil clothes?
About 2/3 of the room, she said. So.
The first room or the second, beyond the glass?
No, beyond the glass, outside,
outside.
For the audience.
Inside there are also people who are kind of those who
victims
suffered, but they are also from police?
Some of them, I don't know. Actually, the people that we're saying that they're provocateurs, they're also claiming to be victims. But the victims are supposed to sit on the other side of the glass with the judge and with the defendants. And what happened was all the chairs there were empty, and they came and they sat in the hall with the goal of starting a fight with us. But news come okay, Okay, so a lot of those victims were sitting on the other side of the glass. Since I wasn't there, I didn't.
По делу семи проходят депутаты Национального собрания Армении Миясник Малхасян, Сасун Микаэлян, Акоп Акопян, бывший министр иностранных дел страны Александр Арзуманян, а также другие лидеры армянской оппозиции Шант Арутюнян, Григор Воскрчан и Сурен Сирунян.
A really horrifying violation of their rights. And so that's one thing that they're doing, because they don't want a public trial. They're afraid. What happened? The reason they've been doing all this to close the trial is because the first days, the guys all spoke so eloquently, and we have such good lawyers, and it's clear that they don't have a case. And so they don't want a public trial. They're afraid of a public trial. So now they're changing that so they can have a closed trial. Plus, they're talking about changing the articles that these guys are charged with. Sort of more narrowly defining the articles, because they're very sort of vague, and Thomas Hammerberg and others have said, and the Council of Europe have said there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of gray areas in these articles. So what we think they're going to do is they're sort of going to make stricter, more narrower articles, and then they're going to say, okay, under the new version, because it's retroactive, under the new version, it doesn't apply to these guys. Or they're gonna do some kind of sentence. What I think probably is they're gonna pass a sentence and then say, okay, like it's a year, but they've already served, so they get out. I think they're gonna do something to pass a sentence, then maybe do an amnesty or something like that. Because if they don't say that these guys are responsible, which they're not, but if the government, if these guys aren't responsible, then who is? Who killed the people? Who killed the people? If it's not their fault, if they didn't do it, which everybody knows they didn't, who did it?
So they need to find them guilty.
It's a scapegoat. They're scapegoats.
And do you think the court is anyway working under some pressure from Parliamentary Assembly of Europe? So you think they would give an amnesty? You believe that would happen?
It's not up to the court to give amnesty. It's up to the president.
Those who give an orders to the court.
The judge
do it take into consideration what Europeans think?
I don't know. I think that their deal is to sort of postpone it, procrastinate, see how long they can fool them. I mean, I think there's some people in the government who are more serious, like David Harutyunyan, who's in charge of revising these laws, is a bit more of a serious person with some morality and things like that. But I think they're just trying to see if they don't want to release them. they don't want to release them, and so they're just trying to see how long. I don't think it's necessarily a well-calculated strategy. They're just seeing how long they can get away with it, how long they can postpone it, how long they can keep these guys in jail.
I'm sorry. Can you tell a few words about you found out the organization of women or those who женщины-политзаключенные?
We're working. It's not. I mean, we're not really sort of official, but there's a lot of us wives of political prisoners because there's.
When
right
it was
now,
found out?
We haven't really found it. It's not really
even
legally
informal.
founded, but informally from
you
the
have
very
a mission.
beginning.
You have
From the very beginning. I mean, the first there was when everything happened on March 1st. There was a state of emergency, and then on April 9th, at the end of that, there started to be some demonstrations, meetings on April 9th, of course, and we all met each other in the early weeks. Immediately after the state of emergency was lifted, we started having the walks on Northern Avenue every day, which continues every single day.
When is it?
It's 6 to 8. 6 to 8. 7 o'clock is a good time to come. The most people are there. That's been going on every night for nearly a year. And so we just met each other, and then we started doing protests. We have just the wives and also other supporters have a weekly protest outside the prosecutor's office Friday at 2 o'clock. That's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Yeah. And we just started going to each other's trials, and then we started trying to do a little bit of outreach, and now
we're working with this committee for political prisoners. They have a committee as well, or
we're in touch with them, and actually one of our women is a member of that committee, so she's sort of like the liaison. And I mean, it's a small country; we're all friends.
Yeah.
And now, as the wives, we've applied for a grant to make a film with an organization called Vernatun, which is an NGO. One of our Vernatun, yeah.
Okay.
It's an NGO, and the head of it is her husband was in hiding, because there's a lot of people who are in hiding as well, and we don't see a difference. I mean, we all work together.
How many people are in your group?
It's open. I mean, I would say sort of the core of people who always come out, 20 or 30.
They are all relatives, or
family members. Yeah. The board for the project that we're trying to work on now, I think it's 9 people. But in terms of women who always participate and women we do stuff with, it's about 20 or 30.
And do you think it's enough international awareness about this?
No. I mean, we've managed to do a lot. They've written about it in The Guardian. I actually had an interview with Al Jazeera the other day.
Yeah.
And they cover it, but of course not enough. I mean, I understand Armenia is a small country, but on the other hand, what's going on here is really representative of what's going on. It's very similar to what's going on in Russia, Georgia, the other countries in the region. And I think it talks a lot too about. I mean, I'm American, so I know what the Western governments have done. It talks a lot about the successes and unfortunately the failures of the West to work in these countries since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
And what about the national media? Do you have access to the national media? Or?
Newspapers, yes. Television, absolutely not. No. Occasionally, our guys can go on and have interviews now. In Yerevan, and throughout the country, there is no independent television. There's one station, Gala television in Gyumri. But the only independent station in Yerevan, Ahmet Plus, they closed I think 6 years ago, and that's a huge tragedy. And people unfortunately didn't realize at the time. If Ahmet Plus hadn't been closed, none of this would have happened. March 1st, those people wouldn't have been killed.